Hare Krishna, and welcome to the GBC Strategic Planning Team's presentation about Brindavan. And we're very fortunate this evening, well, evening for me, morning for her, to be talking about Brindavan, outside of Brindavan, with her Grace Jagattarini Devi Dasi, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and a long-time resident of Brindavan. When I moved to Brindavan in 1989, she had already been there a number of years, and really has made it her one of the most important parts of her life to experience the Dham and to teach others about the holy Dham of Brindavan. So Jagattarini Devi, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Braj.
So we have a few questions for you, and the first one is a personal one. So you lived in Brindavan for many, many years, and now you've been back and forth for also many years. How do you remain connected to Brindavan when you're not there personally, when you're not there literally, physically in the Holy Dham?
Braj, before I answer your question, I would just like to say, for anyone who happened to see the poster that was put out for this particular presentation, that the theme is not so much about some Gupta place within Brindavan that I know something about and will share, but the theme is more about a Gupta Brindavan in the West, or as you're saying, how to keep that Brindavan essence and that meditation even on Brindavan alive whilst you're living in the fast pace, full responsibilities of family, of business, of personal sadhana, and everything else that goes on as part of especially this current reality time. How to keep that meditation on Brindavan, I would have to say how to keep returning to it rather than saying how to keep it alive, because I myself am also faced with my list of challenges that draw my attention to all these different elements as well.
Right.
So I'm always struggling to get back rather than to maintain that focus. So I was thinking, in conjunction with your asking me about this, what I do to keep, I would say, my orientation, that whatever I am doing is meant to be part of my journey towards ultimately Brindavan. And so there's a few elements to that. One is, for me, is to keep remembering that Krishna's present right now, where I am, is fully present with me at this point, when my mind has wandered this way or wandered that way, or I've got all worried about something and so on, that he's there. And so I need to first connect again my Krishna consciousness, my consciousness of Krishna, to my activities and my what I'm doing. And then once that's a little bit balanced again, if I've become busy or distracted or worried or frightened, then the next thing for me is to remember that Krishna's in Brindavan, and that I've been given the opportunity by Srila Prabhupada's mercy to know that. So I would say there's a few things that help me. One is to have friends who also have a taste for Vrindavan, and to share sometimes some memories and say, do you remember when we did this? Do you remember this? And so on.
Right.
Another real one for me is I have photos everywhere. In my office, in my bedroom, in my kitchen, on the fridge, everywhere there's pictures of Brindavan. Another one is to play music as much as possible in the background. You might even be able to hear kirtan in the background right now. I try to do that because it just stimulates again that hang on, this is the purpose of my existence. I like to listen to Leelas of Brindavan. I'm a visual person, so I get stimulus from usually watching and hearing. My friends like to read Krishna books, other books that again bring you towards the Bhagavatam's essential message. And I also get a lot of inspiration from reading about Srila Prabhupada and his life living in Vrindavan so simply, when Vrindavan was an incredibly austere place to live.
Yeah.
And also of Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur, who gives a lot of the theology of the Bhagavatam. So these are some of the things that come to mind right now that help me.
Wow, you have quite a absorbed life. Blessed, you have a blessed life.
I wish I did. I wish I did, but I have tools. I would say I have tools for a blessed life. I'm struggling to stay firmly focused on them, but whenever I return to them, they're still there. And that's what gives me an enormous amount of hope and courage and confidence also.
Well,
this morning,
go ahead.
I was thinking this morning that I was going to have to speak a little personally, and so my mind was racing a bit, as it tends to. And I remembered how I was thinking, when did I feel most at home in Vrindavan? What do I relate to most? And the thing that came to my mind was the 3 times I can recall feeling the most intimately safe and connected with Vrindavan in an unusual way was when I broke my knee and had to have a big blue cast on my leg.
I remember that.
And then when I broke my ankle and I had pink cast on the other leg. And when I first arrived and I got jaundice. Because all those 3 times, and especially the first one, I was rendered completely helpless. Even my sadhana was terrible. Everything was terrible. And so I just had to rest in the arms of the Dham. And they were there. There was an amazing softness and caringness that came just from the Dham itself. Through different people, through different things, there was a connection that was made. And so when I'm in the West and I'm distracted and start feeling guilty, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my time? I go back to that time and say, at the end, there'll be nothing. You'll just have to rest in the arms of Krishna and he'll be there then.
Well, that's a great segue into the next question, though, because so you had those 3 experiences, and then you also, when you look at the different pictures in your wall and on your refrigerator, everything, you've been to those places, and you can remember what Varshana was like, or Nandagram, or Govardhan, whatever. What advice would you give to someone who's never been to Brindavan? How can they connect if they haven't had that good fortune? Well,
here in Perth, we've started, I would guess you could say, a center. It's not a temple. It's a gallery. We've begun with the gallery, and we've decided to call it Vrindavalley. We have once a week programs where we speak something very simple in Krishna consciousness, because we're dealing with newcomers, people who are Westerners mostly, and they don't know anything about Vrindavan, not a clue. And I started to try to introduce them to Vrindavan through the trees of Vrindavan. And I mixed together, we call our Saturday night program, we call it the Wisdom Tree. And I would mix together some Bhagavad Gita, because they need that, and something to do with nature and trees in the world, something ecological, put that in the formula, and then I would choose a tree in Brindavan. The tree in Brindavan would lead into some pastime, but they would connect through these other ingredients so that they didn't realize that they were connecting with Brindavan in this special way. And after we did that all last year, and at the end of the year before COVID, we told the people we would like to take you on a visit to Brindavan, and everyone wanted to go.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I would say from our formula at work that you need to connect them with nature more. You need to connect them with Bhagavad Gita more, because they need to understand the distinction between matter and spirit. And then you tell them about Vrindavan. Now, that's a non-devotee. For a devotee, somebody who's already practicing.
Yeah, that was my next question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Start with Krishna book.
Start with Krishna.
Start with Krishna book. That's how my love for Brindavan originated. And then become curious. I want to understand this more. When I went to Brindavan, I had a book. I used to go in those early days around and walk around and look at things, and I was amazed how wonderful I thought Brindavan was. But everything I saw, I had a question. But how come? Why this? And you said this, how come this? My fascination for Brindavan just seemed to add up questions. And I was therefore always looking for answers. And eventually, at that time, there were no books about Brindavan other than Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book, and the first book by Dhruva Prabhu was put out. There were no other books, and everything was in Hindi.
Yeah, nothing in English. Yeah,
it was a great mystery. But now there are books, and there are people who have had the experience of what is Brindavan. So you have to start with curiosity. That's the first thing. As a devotee or as a newcomer, the same principle. And then what happens is that Krishna, who's within your heart, I firmly believe this, he'll put you in touch with a series of events that will help your curiosity to receive reciprocation. It's so true, because what happens is in the morning you're looking forward to a busy day, and so you need guidelines in how to direct your energy and your focus so that you achieve something of lasting value alongside of the practical things that you have to do. In the evening you're going to prepare for the next day, and so when you go to sleep, if you have any touch with Leela, it's like, I remember Srila Prabhupada himself saying that in the village when he was young, you would hear Leela every night. It was just automatically you'd hear Leela. And I think the challenge for somebody like myself right now, and for many people, most people who are living in a Western environment, is we're so bombarded with urgent, supposedly urgent things we have to buy, things we should know, things online, problems all over the world, this person's this, and do you know that, and on and on and on and on. And it's all human interest. It's not there's no divine focus, no firm, pure divine focus in the world. And so if you don't insert one yourself, there won't be one.
And I would add that, because I did a lot of traveling in India. You say the West, but I don't know if Melbourne, Australia is any different than Delhi or Mumbai or Kolkata or Bangalore in terms of busyness.
And you're completely correct.
The world.
Yeah. But then I would say it's not the West, it's outside of Brindavan.
Yeah.
And I think you might be going to ask me about modern day Brindavan.
Well, yeah, why don't we segue into that then? Because that's a perfect thing. So, okay, so we've covered people who've never been, and we've given them, some ideas, both those who are devotees and those who are not yet devotees. Now the question would be, okay, I go to Brindavan for the first time. and I see traffic jam outside of the temple, like pretty much all day long.
Yes.
Billboards everywhere.
Yes.
You know, but buy this flat, and then now there's well, not skyscrapers, but there's relatively tall buildings, and you know, and then there's open sewage, and you know, how do we get beyond that? And you know, we read Krishna book. Okay, so I'm a new. My first trip to Brindavan, I read Krishna book. I read about all the flowers and the groves and everything. Then I get to Brindavan. So how do we pierce that veil, so to speak, and experience Brindavan?
Well, the first thing that always comes to my mind is that you need help. You don't do it alone, because alone you're so vulnerable. And also Krishna consciousness is not meant to be practiced alone. Even one's entrance into Vrindavan, interestingly enough, even the spiritual Vrindavan up in the spiritual sky, it's not done alone. It's through the guidance of Guru and advanced Vaishnavas.
Right.
So when you go to Vrindavan alone, you will confront all of those things. And if you go to Vrindavan in a group, what will happen is that you'll be hearing something counter to what you're seeing.
Right, right.
And that will create a different kind of tension. In other words, if I walk in alone, I'm dependent only on my own spirituality, which may be very elevated, and that's a different situation. But if I'm not very elevated, I will only see what's called the Drishyaman Dham, or the Brindavan that you can see with your eyes. And that isn't the full Dham. That's just you could say the orange peel of the orange.
Right.
And so what's really interesting was, I said to you earlier, and I heard myself say it, that Srila Prabhupada lived there when it was very difficult to live in Brindavan.
Right.
He was poverty stricken. He was going to and from Delhi with great effort to get the money. He was trying to sell his literature to get enough money to keep doing what he was doing. It was very, very poor in Brindavan at that time. So there were a certain type of austerities.
Yeah.
But I think the austerities that you meet now when you go there are much greater.
Yeah. There was also the beauty when he was there. The external beauty was much more when he was there.
Yeah. I had an interesting experience at the start of this year. I was in Brindavan. I usually come once a year for a couple of months. And while I'm away, all the responsibilities here, they're all shouldered by Sri Radharaman Prabhu. And he's anxious if I don't stay away too long, because it's a weight on his shoulders. So I was on my way to the airport to return to Australia, and I was thinking I'm a little overweight in my luggage. So I was thinking to myself, I wonder if I'm going to have a problem with my luggage. And then I intuitively was like thinking, I think something's not quite right. So I got to the airport, and they weighed my luggage, and they were super, super conscious, and they weighed every single thing.
Really?
And they found that, and they found I was 15 kilos overweight.
That's going to cost a lot of money.
It's going to cost me 4,000, and I don't have any money. And so I did everything. I cried. I did all the things you do at the airport. And I called, where's the manager? And the manager came, and he said, I'm really sorry. I can't do anything. And then he went away and talked to somebody else, and they came together, and they felt sorry for this old lady who was clearly confused. And they came back, and I did everything I could, and they said to me, all right, you move a few things around and you can go. So I thought, So I moved a few things around, and they told me, then they said to me, where are your papers? And I said, what papers? And they said, you're here on a student visa, where are your papers? And I said, I've been on a student visa for 4 years, and I've never had any papers. And they looked at each other. And the man said to me, he said to one of his lesser officers, he said, go with her to the immigration. So we went together to the immigration, and the big fat immigration officer, he looked at the whole thing, looked at my passport, and he said to the young man, "There's no way she can leave the country." So my luggage had all been sorted out, but I wasn't leaving. So I came back, and the Singapore Airlines man, he said, "Don't worry." He said, "It's easy in the morning. You can fix this and you can leave tomorrow." So I said, "Okay." So then I rang in the morning Delhi, and they said, "No, you have to go back to Vrindavan." So I went back to Vrindavan, and it was a very funny feeling. I left all my luggage, everything, all my shopping, everything done in Delhi. And I went back in the car alone to Vrindavan with a very perplexed feeling, glad to be going back to Vrindavan, but also confused. And when I got back, I walked into, we have an apartment, I walked in, and everybody who'd been staying there had gone. Everyone was gone. The place was a mess. Here I was back in a messy place with none of my belongings, not even a toothbrush. And there I was. And then I went over to the temple. I told them my problem. They said, "Don't worry, we can fix this. It will take a week." And I thought, that's a long time. Well, they went and they fixed it. It took a week. And when we went to get a booking on the airlines back to Perth, this was now late January, the airline said, "I'm sorry, we have no bookings until the 1st of March. And when I told Sri Radharaman that, he was like, "What? You can't do this to me." And I was like, "I'm sorry, I didn't do it. It wasn't really my intention." And I got a whole month in Brindavan with nothing to do, no festival, no fanfare, no social. I didn't know anyone who was there. It was quiet Vrindavan. And it was amazing. It was extraordinary. I walked around places I hadn't visited for 35 years.
Wow.
On Shivaratri, I walked everywhere. I didn't even get a rickshaw. I just was so grateful to be in touch with that early spirit and feeling of Vrindavan.
Oh, nice.
It was amazing. Even all the horrible, crazy things which were at their minimum, because it wasn't Kartik, they seemed benign. The main thing was that touching that place again without any other agenda, to go shopping, for class, to do this, to do that, to talk to my family, to talk to my friends, nothing.
Right.
Just
wow.
And so I stayed there for a month like that, and I left on March the 1st. It was the only flight, and then Singapore closed their flights. And my husband and my son came on the 15th of March on their very, very last flight. And then everything was closed. By COVID.
Amazing. So
they said to me, "How did you do that?" I said, "I didn't do it."
Right.
It was an accident. But I think it was an accident. I think it was a gift for the COVID that we now have to deal with.
So, just a little bit more on this external Brindavan, or the Brindavan we see, because when I first moved there in 1989, and I can remember maybe 1 car, 2 cars a day. Those shops across the street did not exist. The school, the university across the street didn't. There was practically nothing there. There was beautiful groves where there's now big apartment buildings. And the Prikaramarg was not asphalt; it was all beautiful soft sand. Raman Reti. It was soft sand. Yeah, it was just so much simpler then, and now it's almost like you couldn't recognize the two, but from 89 till 2020. I remember I hadn't been there for maybe 2 years, and I couldn't believe the changes. So it is. I like your point about if you go with a group, or if you have a plan. Let's say even if you go there by yourself, but you're going to go on Prikrama with Dinabandhu Prabhu or whoever, that's something to do rather than just kind of show up without a plan, because it is bewildering, and it is like, where's the Krishna book where's the Krishna I read in the Krishna?
Yes. I still remember the first time I went in 1974, and Guru Das and Jamuna were in charge of the temple, and which wasn't built. There was no temple. It was a construction site. And we went to Govardhan. They got a bus, and all those fortunate souls, we got in the bus, went to Govardhan Hill, and we stopped, between Radhakund and the town of Govardhan.
Okay.
And he got us all out of the bus, and we walked up to this kind of, to me, it was like a pile of rocks. And he said, and this is Govardhan Hill. I was like, this is Govardhan Hill? The hill that Krishna lifted, I can see the top of it. It's tiny. This is Govardhan Hill? And I can still remember that shock, that impression that, no, this can't be Govardhan Hill.
Right.
And I remember it sweetly, because I know that now when I go and see Govardhan, I go, this is Govardhan Hill. And I never think this is so small. I never think like that.
No.
Because the spiritual essence is what is magnified being in the Dhamma.
Yeah. And I've taken even people who are not devotees at all, especially they find Govardhan to be mystical. And they feel something, even if they're not.
I'll share with you another story. One time I was in Brindavan, and one sannyasi was there, and he came to me and he said to me, listen, Mataji, he said, I'm from New York. There's a group of people here from New York. They're yoga people. They came here for the weekend to Brindavan. They don't know anything about Brindavan. Can you take them to Varshana tomorrow? And I said to this person, I said, no, I can't take them to Varshana. They don't know anything. What will they do in Varshana? And he said, but Mataji, they need something happening. They're here. So I said, all right. I said to him, I said, I'll be outside at 6 o'clock. You arrange a bus. If they're all there, I'll go with them to Varshana. They were there. Thought they wouldn't be. And we got in the bus. It was a little bus, and I turned around to them. I felt like I better be really honest here, and I said to them, I'm taking you to a place, I can't explain it to you. You won't be able to understand it. You don't have the infrastructure to understand where we're going.
Right.
If you don't mind, I'll just tell you the stories of the place, and you can make whatever you want of it. I've never done that on a parikrama, but I did it that time. And they all sat in the back and they all chatted away about all kinds of things. They were so not in Brindavan. And we got to Varshana and we got out of the bus and I took them through Sankari Kaur and I said, this is the place where Radha and Krishna meet. And they don't know who Radha is. I didn't explain it. And we went all around and did the whole parikrama of Varshana without them knowing really what they're doing even.
Right.
It was the most extremely, they just wildly walked into Vrindavan.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards they all said that was amazing.
Yeah.
They didn't know what it was. So I saw that Brindavan is Brindavan, no matter how many layers you put on the top.
Yeah.
It's just like if you have somebody who's sleeping and you put a blanket over them, but it's a very cold day. It's a dangerously cold day. You might put another blanket over them and you might still feel that's not enough and you put a couple more blankets on as well. Now the person is still there under all the blankets. Mm-hmm. So similarly with Brindavan, in Kali Yuga, Brindavan must be covered because it's such a divine, spiritual pleasure place of Krishna that it has to be covered over so that people who come there, they won't be able to interfere with that. Mm-hmm. Of course they can't, but what I mean by that is as Kali Yuga goes on, Brindavan will be more and more inaccessible to the common person who's just come there. So we're in effect fortunate right now that visiting Vrindavan with all its strange, unfamiliar, unrequired things going on, we're still able to visit.
Yeah.
Right now, we're not even able to do that.
When you were telling that story, I believe it's Nectar of Devotion where Prabhupada says that even a non-devotee who visits Mathura Mandal, Braj, will feel some separation from Krishna.
Yeah.
So
I have a quote that I have on my wall. I'll read it to you.
Please.
If one lives in the earthly land of Brindavan, touches it, sees it, travels to it, meditates upon it, bows down to offer respects to it, sings or hears about its glorious qualities, carries the dust on his head, or has any relationship with it, then this purifying earthly Vrindavan will carry him to the supreme abode of Vrindavan in the spiritual world.
How nice. How nice.
So I keep this up on my wall. And I have another one here that I put on the other side because we need a caution also, because Vrindavan is actually enjoyable, but it's not meant to be enjoyed by us. So I give myself also some sort of caution.
Okay.
So the other verse that I keep, it says, "O Vrindavan, please withdraw your Maya. Although I do not fear the Supreme Lord's Maya, your Maya makes me tremble. They who, because of your Maya, see the otherwise blissful and spiritual nature of you and yours. They see it otherwise, they see it as mundane. They lose their intelligence, they commit offenses and fall far away."
Wow.
So what I get from that is not to be afraid. Oh my gosh, that's so scary. It's to adjust my attitude to being one of submission. And that, I think, was why I love those 3 unhealthy moments in my life, because I was not frightened. I wasn't suffering acutely. I was inconvenienced, but I was contained within the mood of helplessness, and that produced respect.
Right.
So a respect is necessary, not fear.
Right. Not fear would be, fear wouldn't be the Braj mood so much. Right?
No.
Although some devotees say, I'd rather go to Mayapur because Mayapur, no offenses, are considered, Vrindavan's scary.
True. But you see, that's there for a reason, because Mayapur, what is Mayapur? Mayapur is the entrance way to Vrindavan for the whole world. And of course, somebody who is a lover of Mayapur, they will say, well, I love Mayapur. And that's wonderful, because then you can serve there. But the purpose of all the dhams is to bring people to the spiritual world. It's not just to have a comfortable lifestyle or to enjoy life. It's to actually serve there. So service in Mayapur, service in Vrindavan, they're different flavors. And they're both wonderful.
Yes, and if, maybe at another time we'll discuss that, what it means to be non-different, because they're non-different. We hear that they're non-different, right? And at the same time, there are different flavors. It's not.
Yeah.
And that's identical.
That opens up that's just the beginning. That's the threshold of a huge subject matter, which is this philosophy of Achinta Abheda Tattva.
Right.
How we have oneness and difference at the same time. That's the most mysterious thing in the whole of creation.
It is. So we have a few questions that we'll go to in a few minutes, but I thought we talk maybe about our favorite places in Vrindavan. I'll tell you two of mine, and then I'd like to hear yours. One is the courtyard opposite the Radha Gokulananda temple, where Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Lokanath Goswami, and Narottama Das Thakur's samadhis are. Now it's all caged in, and I guess that's nice because it keeps the monkeys away. I can remember when I first would visit there regularly, it was just, you know, in the late 80s and 90s, it wasn't like that. But I just find those three acharyas so inspiring.
Yes,
and
me too.
To go there and pray for their mercy. I found that there's a lot of spiritual shakti in that courtyard.
Yes, definitely.
And my other favorite place is near Raghava Pandit's cave at Govardhan. Just if you're doing parikrama, just before that, there's some places where you can sit just opposite Govardhan Hill and have this like very intimate darshan of Giriraj without being so close that you would chance, you know, stepping on one of the shilas. And at least in the older days, it was quiet. And I would sometimes just go there all day and chant. And those are my two favorite places. What about you?
Wow. Well, you know, I have to say that in the courtyard of Radha Gokulananda, the samadhi of Srila Narottam Das Thakur was constructed by the mercy of those devotees in ISKCON who bought those Memories of Brindavan boxes that we used to make in the early 90s.
Yes.
We collected money gradually from selling them. We never wanted to sell them. We always sought a donation.
Mm-hmm.
And we collected that money. And eventually we had over 1 lakh, which was a lot of money in those days. So I'll tell you two favorite places. One is there. We found that dacoits came and they stole the marble work of Narottam Das Thakur's samadhi at that time. And with the help of Achyuta Prabhu, who was working on Srila Prabhupada's samadhi, we got the opportunity to reconstruct a samadhi for Narottam Das Thakur in that courtyard.
Wow.
So that is a very special place for me. Another special place I would have to mention, there's numerous places.
So many.
I think closest to my heart is Varshana to Nandagram, that area. There I feel at home. I feel like I live there. In my thoughts of Vrindavan, I go there. But another place that was also very significant was at the time we had all this money from these donations, and we had been warned by a Brajabasi, and we didn't need the warning, that we had to turn that back into a donation to the Dham.
Right.
We already wanted to do that. And then somebody came along who wanted to fix the bhajan kutir of Krishna Das Kaviraj at Radhakund.
Radhakund, not in Radha Damodar.
Oh no, on the side of Shamakund actually.
Right.
And at that time, that was a very dilapidated building, and it was terribly badly taken care of. And I trusted this person, but I didn't trust him fully. So he would bring receipts, and I would give money as he brought a receipt. So he more or less was confined in his, whatever. But we managed to reconstruct. They totally took that building down and rebuilt Krishnadas Kaviraj Bhajan Kutir at that time with the money that came from these donations from the memory boxes.
Yeah.
So that's a very uniquely special place also for me in Brindavan.
Nice.
Although, I haven't been there for many, many years to that place. But somebody said one time, and it's true, that it's sometimes nicer to visit the places in your memory than to actually physically go there. That's also a visit to Vrindavan.
Interesting. Let's turn to a couple of these questions.
Yes.
Please share your inspiration behind beginning Brindavan exhibits outside of Brindavan in Australia did you receive any personal instruction from Srila Prabhupada in this direction?
Not directly, because Srila Prabhupada's instruction to me at the time, I was a young woman, was that I should visit Vrindavan. And I said, no, he said, you should come and live here, because I was leaving to go back to Hong Kong. And I was so taken by Vrindavan that we snuck into where Prabhupada was having his massage. And I asked him, he said, how do you like Vrindavan? And I said, oh, it's wonderful, Prabhupada. And he said, then you should come and live here. And I laughed. And I said, you just sent us back to Hong Kong. And he said, then you should come here for some months every year.
Right.
So we actually ended up going there to live. And I didn't know if we would ever come there for some months every year again. So when we came to the West, to Perth, I was deeply missing Vrindavan. A friend of mine, a very close friend, sent me a gift, a 1-inch sized Krishna, a little deity who we called Gopinath. And because I'm an artist, the only thing I could think of was to recreate stories for him, trees for him, the places of Vrindavan for him, make some more little figures so he had some boyfriends, some girlfriends, a mother and a father. And I started to get those figures carved in Vrindavan.
I remember.
And eventually I have a whole box of them, all these little figures. And on festival days, we bring them all out and we have a miniature festival. So the dioramas came about from that. And the gallery came about when there were too many dioramas to keep in my room or our house. We started looking for a bigger place with no idea whatsoever that Krishna had such a magnificent plan and so many wonderful devotees who would take place in presenting.
And I remember, maybe it wasn't to you, maybe it was to your husband, but Prabhupada, this is, before moving to Brindavan, that Prabhupada said, preach for 10 years in the West. And then move to Brindavan. And it came out to almost exactly 10 years. I think he calculated it later, but it was actually like 10 years and 6 months from when Prabhupada said that you actually moved to Brindavan.
I remember when he said you should come for some months every year, I remember later thinking, if only I had been mature enough to take him seriously, maybe I wouldn't have let him down in the service that he wanted of us, which was to stay in Hong Kong. But I was too immature, so I thought he was just being polite. And I thought, we'll never get to come every year. So I panicked and we left Hong Kong.
Right. Yes. Well, that's a whole other interview on Leela. The other question is, how do we remain focused while in Brindavan? It seems that when we are in the Holy Dham, we think of our home back in the States or in India. And when we are in home, we think of Brindavan.
Yeah. It's true. It's very true. I remember one time getting a letter from a friend in Australia who hadn't come to Kartik, and she was saying, I remember the Damuna and the this and the that and so on. And I was thinking, what? She's remembering all these things, and I'm here struggling with how to keep my schedule and how to say hello to all the people so they won't think I'm unfriendly, and on and on and on.
Right.
So she's having a better experience than I am. So I think there's something wonderful in that also. I truly believe when I'm in Brindavan, I suffer from a different kind of tension. The tension is between me and where I should be in Brindavan. How can I focus on Brindavan? I'm distracted. And the tension when I'm here is, how can I get to Brindavan? How can I get to Brindavan? I'm so distracted. I truly believe in both cases, there's a healthiness to that, as long as one doesn't take it to some extreme degree, as long as one keeps that in balance with what else is going on. It's a mood of separation that doesn't stop when you get to Vrindavan, because you get to the physical place, but the consciousness has not yet been purified fully to enter into the real Vrindavan.
So then the question about the first part of the question about remaining focused in Vrindavan, any thoughts on that? Because
yes,
you could get absorbed in going to Loy Bazaar and going to the MVT restaurant.
Yeah, you could. In fact, most people do. I would say, yes, you've got to have a hearing and chanting process. You've got to go there, or a being alone process of prayer. But you have to have a spiritual intention in the primary position to benefit from being in Vrindavan. And if not, you'll benefit in the negative way, that you'll go away and think, wow, I didn't do that right. But you will benefit either way, even if you go to MVT and do all the silly things that people may choose to do instead of focusing in Vrindavan. Still, you will get some benefit because you're touching a live current. But you'll get much more benefit if you plug in the lamp and turn on the light.
Yes, right. Well, that is a good segue into the third question. How do you deal with offenses that may be committed in the Dham?
Acknowledge them. Acknowledge them to the best of your ability, that I'm really sorry. Be realistic about who you are. Try to avoid them wherever possible. Keep good company of people who are there with a good intent, because they'll lift you up. They'll bring the consciousness up. And pray. Because as I said, Vrindavan is like a mother. So a mother doesn't like the children to act in disrespectful ways, and definitely doesn't like the children to be developing bad habits, but also understands the age and maturity of the child and is there to encourage, support, and help. And the chanting, the morning program, the sadhana are essential if you want to get the best result from a visit to Vrindavan. Yeah,
thank you. This is great. I feel like I just took a trip to Vrindavan. I think our time is up for today. I really want to thank you, Jagattarini Mataji, for bringing us to Brindavan and telling us how to be there wherever we are in the world. And I hope we can interview you again and again on different topics. Maybe we'll go to Puri or Mayapur with you sometime. So
thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.